Welcome to the Anthropic Claude Certified Architect Foundations CCA-F Question Bank Series. In this video, I've got 10 exam-style practice questions lined up for you, covering the kind of agentic architecture, Claude code, prompt engineering, tool and MCP design, and context management scenarios you'll see on the real CCA-F exam. Each question comes with the correct answer and a full explanation, including why the wrong options are wrong. Here's how to get the most out of this. When a question appears, pause the video, pick your answer, then hit play to check yourself. Ready? Let's dive in. Question 86. A developer joins a project with 400,000 lines of code and no documentation. They want to understand the architecture before making changes. What is the most effective way to use Claude Code here? The correct answer is A. Ask it to explore the codebase and explain the structure and key flows, then capture the durable findings in a committed Claude.md for the whole team. Exploration answers the immediate question, and writing the durable conclusions into project memory converts one person's onboarding effort into shared context that every future session and teammate inherits. Now, why the other options are wrong. Paste the entire codebase into a single prompt and ask for an architecture overview is incorrect. 400,000 lines will not fit in a context window, and even a large excerpt would crowd out the reasoning space needed to synthesize an overview. Ask for an architecture overview without letting it read the code to save tokens is incorrect. Without reading the code, the answer would be invented. The value here comes precisely from grounding in the actual repository. Begin making changes immediately and rely on the test suite to catch misunderstandings is incorrect. Tests catch broken behavior, not architectural misunderstanding, and this forgoes the cheap step of building context first. Question 87. An engineer wants to pursue two unrelated changes to the same repository at the same time without the two sets of edits colliding in the working tree. What approach fits? The correct answer is B. Use a separate Git worktree per workstream, so each has its own checkout and working tree on its own branch. Git worktrees give each workstream an independent checkout of the same repository, so edits, builds, and test runs cannot interfere. This is the standard way to run genuinely parallel work on one repo. Now, why the other options are wrong? Work on both changes in the same checkout and separate them with careful staging at commit time is incorrect. Interleaved edits in one working tree are easy to mix up, and separating them at commit time is error-prone, especially when both touch the same files. Complete the first change entirely before starting the second is incorrect. This is safe and often right, but it does not meet the stated requirement of pursuing both at the same time. Clone the repository twice into unrelated directories is incorrect. This does achieve isolation, but duplicates history and loses the shared object store and branch coordination that worktrees provide. Question 88. An engineer has an MCP server they personally find useful across all of their own projects, but which their teammates do not want. Where should it be configured? The correct answer is C, at the user level, so it applies to that engineer's sessions across all projects without being shared with the team. Scope should match audience. A tool that is personally useful across every project belongs in user-level configuration, which follows the individual and is not committed to any repository. Now, why the other options are wrong? At the project level in a committed configuration file is incorrect. Committing it imposes the server on every teammate who checks out the repository, which the scenario says is unwanted. At the project level in a git-ignored local file repeated in each project is incorrect. This achieves the effect but requires duplicating and maintaining the same configuration in every repository the engineer works in. In Claude.md, noting that the engineer prefers this server is incorrect. Claude.md is context for the model, not configuration, and it is typically committed and therefore shared. Question 89. A platform team wants a short reminder about the company's security review requirements attached to every prompt an engineer submits in a particular repository, without editing anyone's prompts. Which mechanism fits? The correct answer is D, a user prompt submit hook that appends the reminder as additional context when a prompt is submitted. User prompt submit runs as a prompt is submitted and can add context to it, which is exactly the insertion point for a standing reminder that should accompany every request without the engineer typing it. Now, why the other options are wrong. A session start hook that adds the reminder once when the session begins is incorrect. This is a reasonable alternative, but the reminder is added once and may be far from the model's attention many turns later, whereas the requirement is per prompt. A pre-tool use hook that adds the reminder before each tool call is incorrect. Pre-tool use fires per tool invocation, which is both the wrong trigger and far more often than once per prompt. A note in the repository's README asking engineers to mention the requirements themselves is incorrect. This depends on every engineer remembering every time, which is what automating it is meant to avoid. Question 90. A team wrote a skill for their deployment procedure, but it is rarely invoked even when engineers ask about deploying. What should they examine first? The correct answer is A, the skill's description, since that is what determines whether it is surfaced for a given task, and rewrite it to name the situations and vocabulary engineers actually use. A skill is selected on the strength of its description matching the task at hand. A vague description, or one that omits the words engineers actually use, is the most common reason a well-written skill sits unused. Now, why the other options are wrong. The length of the skill's instructions, since long skills are less likely to be selected, is incorrect. Selection is driven by the description's match to the task, not by how long the body is. Whether the skill file is committed to version control is incorrect. Committing matters for sharing it with the team, but the scenario says the skill exists and is simply not being chosen. The engineer's phrasing, which should be standardized to match the skill's wording, is incorrect. Asking humans to adapt their vocabulary to the tool inverts the problem. The description should meet engineers where they are. Question 91. A team finds Claude code, sometimes reports a task complete, while the test suite is still failing. They want an automatic check that the tests pass before a session is allowed to conclude that it is done. Which mechanism is appropriate? The correct answer is B, a stop hook that runs the test suite when the agent attempts to finish and blocks completion if it fails. A stop hook fires when the agent tries to conclude, which is the right moment to assert a completion criterion. Because it can block, the definition of done becomes enforced rather than advisory. Now, why the other options are wrong. A post-tool use hook that runs the tests after every file edit is incorrect. This is a useful quality gate but runs far more often than needed and does not gate the moment of completion, which is the stated requirement. A Claude.md instruction stating that tasks are not complete until tests pass is incorrect. This is worth having as a default, but it is guidance the model can misjudge. The team asked for an automatic check. A CI pipeline that runs the tests after the work is pushed is incorrect. CI catches the problem eventually, but only after the engineer has already been told the work was done and has pushed it. Question 92. A team wants a code review subagent that can read files and run the linter, but must never modify files or push to a remote. How should this be set up? The correct answer is C. Define the subagent with an explicitly restricted toolset covering only reading and the linter, so write and push capabilities are not available to it. Subagents can be defined with their own restricted set of tools. Granting only read and lint capability means the review agent structurally cannot write or push, which is a stronger guarantee than instructing it not to. Now, why the other options are wrong? Define the subagent with all tools available and instruct it in its prompt not to modify files is incorrect. This leaves the destructive capability present and relies on the instruction holding, which a mistake or injected instruction can defeat. Use the main agent for review and manually revert any unwanted changes afterwards is incorrect. Reverting after the fact is cleanup, not prevention, and a push cannot be cleanly undone. Run the review on a copy of the repository so changes do not matter is incorrect. This limits damage to files but does not prevent a push, and it adds a copy step that can drift from the real repository. Question 93. A project's integration test suite takes 25 minutes. Running it in the foreground blocks the session for the duration. What is the appropriate way to handle this? The correct answer is D. Start the suite as a background task and continue with other work, checking its output when it completes. Long-running commands should not occupy the interactive session. Running the suite in the background frees the agent to continue on independent work and collect the results when the run finishes. Now, why the other options are wrong? Run the suite in the foreground and wait, since test results are needed before continuing, is incorrect. Sometimes true, but when there is independent work available, this wastes 25 minutes of session time on every run. Run only a subset of the tests so the command finishes quickly is incorrect. Narrowing scope is a reasonable tactic during iteration, but changes what is being verified and is not a general answer to long-running commands. Increase the command timeout so the run is not interrupted is incorrect. A sufficient timeout is necessary, but does not address the fact that the session is blocked while waiting. Question 94. An engineering manager finds Claude code spend varies wildly across a 30-person team and wants to bring it under control without banning the tool. What is the most effective first step? The correct answer is A. Establish visibility into usage per person and per project, then set expectations and limits informed by what the data shows. Cost control starts with attribution. Knowing who and what is driving spend distinguishes a few pathological workflows from broad, legitimate use, and lets limits be set where they actually matter. Now, why the other options are wrong? Impose a uniform hard cap on every engineer immediately is incorrect. A uniform cap set without data will be too low for legitimate heavy users and too high to constrain the actual outliers. Require manager approval before any session is started is incorrect. This adds significant friction to routine work and would likely reduce the tool's value more than its cost. Mandate that everyone use the smallest available model is incorrect. This reduces unit cost while degrading results on the harder tasks where the tool pays for itself, and it does not address usage volume. Question 95. A repository is very large, and sessions spend a lot of time and context exploring irrelevant directories before finding the relevant code. What is the most effective improvement? The correct answer is B. Document the repository's layout and the location of key subsystems in Claude.md so sessions start knowing where to look. Repeated exploration is a symptom of missing project knowledge. Recording the layout and where key subsystems live turns an expensive rediscovery on every session into context that is present from the start. Now, why the other options are wrong? Delete or archive the directories that are rarely relevant is incorrect. Restructuring the repository to suit tooling is a drastic response, and those directories presumably exist for a reason. Instruct the model to explore fewer files before answering is incorrect. This caps the symptom while leaving the agent underinformed, making wrong answers more likely rather than exploration more efficient. Start each session by pasting the output of a full directory listing is incorrect. A raw listing of a very large repository consumes substantial context and conveys little about which parts matter. And that's a wrap on this video. Nice work getting through those 10 questions. If this helped, you're going to want the complete set. All 390 exam-style questions, with full explanations across all 5 CCA-F domains, are available in my Udemy course, Anthropic Claude Certified Architect Foundations, CCA-F, 6 full practice exams. The link is in the description below. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next video, where I'll walk you through 10 more questions. See you in the next video.